Hello, friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster.
And Midge, we have talked several times on this pod about how many adult weirdos had an ancient Egypt fascination as a kid.
Yes, we certainly have.
And I actually was prepping a completely different episode for this week, but I fell to the call. I felt the call of the sands. So today we are going to talk about the Sphinx.
Oh, cool.
Yes. So I did watch a very interesting Nova episode called Secrets of the Sphinx about this, as well as reading kind of an article about the people who are featured in that, and just also general knowledge, because as previously mentioned, I was a weird Egypt kid, so...
Right, yes.
And I know obviously we've talked about this. Do you have a favorite topic about ancient civilization that was kind of your fave as a kid, or were you just kind of into it in general?
I definitely got into Egyptology.
Yes.
I think I was very into like the pyramids and the idea of like pharaohs' tombs and things like that was very fascinating to me.
What a surprise. Midge Munster interested in tombs?
In tombs, I know.
I would never believe it.
Well, my favorite Halloween movie of all time, The Halloween Tree.
Yes.
Has like a whole section where they go to ancient Egypt.
It sure does.
One of the kids is like dressed like a mummy and has to learn why he wears the mummy's like wraps for Halloween. So they go in and explore the burial rituals and things of ancient Egyptians, and I think that was an early like exposure to that in a way that I hadn't ever seen, and I definitely went down a hole at that point of like, ooh, these people were burying fancy.
Right? They were doing some fancy stuff.
They were doing some crazy stuff.
Yes. All right. So I would, at least in my opinion, I think the Great Sphinx of Giza, as it is kind of officially called, is probably second only to the pyramids in kind of symbolizing the world of ancient Egypt to us today. And one thing that, like, I did not really fully understand as a kid, like, reading about Egyptology type stuff, is just how long this span of time is, which will come up in this discussion. Some of you may have heard the factoid that Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of the iPhone than the construction of the Great Pyramid. Which is true. Obviously, it is phrased for effect. So she lived about 2,000 years before the iPhone and about 2,500 years after the Great Pyramid. So she's kind of right in the middle, which is just crazy because obviously, kind of from our simplified modern perspective, especially as a kid in the 90s, you were kind of like, yep, this was all just happening at the same time, probably.
Yes, for sure. I would say that was my perspective of it, for sure.
Yes. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Sphinx is a monumental limestone sculpture. It is a lion laying on its stomach with the head of a man wearing a pharaoh's headdress. This beast is 240 feet long. It is 66 feet tall and 62 feet wide. So it is one of the largest sculptures in the world. And unlike a lot of structures of this time that were constructed from giant blocks of stone, it was actually carved directly in place into the rock. So, like, they had to, like, excavate and dig down over 60 feet of rock to, like, remove all of this stone around it, and then go crazy. And do, like, the paws and the face and stuff, which is wild. So some archaeologists and a sculptor did, like, try, they used replica tools working on a piece of stone, and kind of based on their experience, they estimated that it would take 100 people about 3 years to carve that.
Jeez.
Which is a wild. Also, fun fact, this is a major contributor to kind of the mystery of the Sphinx today, because you cannot use the material to date it because it's just the same as everything around it.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yes. And now some of you may be saying, Penny, I have seen a picture of the Sphinx and there are limestone blocks there. I will tell you more about this in good time.
More on that later.
Yes, because the Sphinx has lived a long and mysterious life. Lots of twists and turns. One of the reasons that we don't actually know when it was made is because the people who built it did not write about it in anything that remains to this day. So we know from comparing the stone, and this was so cool to me. So in the limestone, there's like shells and fossils because that used to be a sea. Like there was all water there in the super duper ancient, maybe even prehistoric times. So they are able to like compare like the makeup of the rock to some of the stuff around it. So they can tell that chunks that were removed from around the Sphinx to carve it kind of out of the ground were also used to build the temple that at its feet. But it seems like the temple and the Sphinx itself was maybe not finished at the time. There's a funny bit in the Smithsonian article where they're like, oh yeah, like in one of the like areas of like the quarry, they just found like a block of limestone with like workers' tools and like their lunch, basically, like a water jug that looks like someone just was like, welp, I'm done, and dropped their stuff and ditched.
That's enough of that. That's weird.
Which is crazy. So, of course, there has been a lot of debate over the centuries about who built the Sphinx and when. That does continue to this day. But from my understanding, kind of the most accepted theory today is that the Sphinx was created some point around 2500 BC. So that's 4,500 years from now. And that is like in the same time period that they were building the pyramids there. So,
yeah,
which would make sense.
I was gonna say, it makes sense if you're already working on something.
Yeah, if it's like if you're a person who's like, I feel like I want to build massive limestone things.
Right. Well, yeah. While you've got the folks around who presumably kind of know what they're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, Khufu was the pharaoh who built the Great Pyramid of Giza, the first one, and then he had one son who like ruled briefly, but there was some drama, and then his next son, Khafre, ruled, and then he also built a pyramid. And then Khafre's son built the last pyramid. And the most accepted consensus is that Khafre probably was the one who built the Sphinx. It is directly in front of his pyramid and kind of seems to be part of his general burial complex. In the temple that is like by the Sphinx's feet, they found a statue of him.
Oh,
so
cool.
They're like, okay, this is probably this dude.
Probably him, yeah.
This is probably him. So the theory that was put forward, Mark Lenner was the main archaeologist in like this Nova special, which I highly recommend. It's on YouTube. I'm not going to go into like all of the details, and they talk a little bit more about some of the other like theories of it, which it is kind of funny because like it's clear that this dude is the star of this Nova special. So like they had some other guy in being like, I think that the Sphinx was created by water erosion. And then they go to this guy who's like, well, that's a stupid idea, basically. And I'm like, I'd be kind of mad if I was that first dude who was in this Nova special. And I feel like I kind of was put in there to be dunked on. But...
Yeah, like, okay. And next we throw to this idiot.
Right, exactly.
It's the aliens guy.
Pretty much, yeah. So the theory that this kind of archaeologist Mark was putting forward is that the temple, the Sphinx, and the pyramid were kind of all part of what he described as a resurrection machine. Amazing band name.
Yes.
With the kind of understanding that in the culture at the time, you wanted to keep like your name going, and that he was kind of like, ooh, if I have me focused in this sun worship temple, then it'll just keep people talking about me and we'll be worshiping the sun and I'll definitely get resurrected and it'll be great.
And it'll be great.
It'll be great. Because there is, like, an interesting way that the temple and, like, the Sphinx and the pyramid line up at, surprise, surprise, the equinox. And he's like, yeah, maybe something for that. And the lion was also often representative of the sun or a sun god in Egypt at the time. So that all kind of makes sense. But over the years, this area was abandoned, and the Sphinx got buried in sand all the way up to its shoulder, so just his head was poking out. And 1,000 years later, but it's still only 1400 BC, Thutmose IV performs what we know as the first excavation and potentially the first refurbishment of the Sphinx. How do we know this? It's because he put a big sign on a rock between the Sphinx's paws telling people about it.
Is it that tablet in the middle of its chest?
Yeah. Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah. So basically, this tablet says, hey, I was walking in the desert, and I got tired, and I laid down here by this statue, and in a dream, the statue spoke to me, and was like, I'm Hora Maket, Horus in the horizon, and you should clear away the sand and restore my magnificent body, and I will make you king. So I did. And there you go.
Wow. Did he become king?
He did.
Well,
he
there
did.
you go.
He sure did. It worked. So obviously, who knows how much of this is, propaganda, storytelling, whatever. But Thutmose did clear away the sand from at least part of the Sphinx. He did worship the Sphinx and at the Sphinx during the time, and so there was a big Sphinx cult that started at the time. Pretty cool. We see the Sphinx spreading in popularity, and at this point is when we start seeing like depictions or reference to it elsewhere in Egypt. Although it is important to note that they did not call it the Sphinx. So, like I said, we have no record of what it was called when it was originally built. At this point, it is referred to as Hora Maket, but it is not until 2,000 years after the statue is built that the Greeks are like, hey, this reminds me of our Sphinx story. Let's call this the Sphinx. And ain't that just the way? Mm-hmm. But it is, so there are some of the limestone blocks that we see, like, around the Sphinx, they think were added at this point in time. So, like, 1,000 years, it was already an ancient thing, and they were like, let's, like, fix this up a little bit.
I wonder if it being buried in sand helped or hurt it.
It definitely helped it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, because limestone is so, like, it erodes so easily.
Yeah, so they're definitely...
Now the body of the Sphinx is in rough shape.
Yes, yeah, we definitely see a lot of wind erosion on the Sphinx today, and, like, there's stuff that, people try to do to protect it, but yeah, the fact that it was buried in the sand definitely helped protect it for many, many years. So we're in Greco-Roman times now, and the Sphinx is a super hot tourist destination.
Sure.
Because it breaks my brain that it's like the Romans were like, wow, look at this cool ancient thing.
Right.
Like, even at that, like, you're ancient.
No, you are.
No, you. So, like, there's a record of them being like, okay, like, it got a little buried again, let's clear away some sand so Emperor Nero can come and see it. We have a write-up on the Sphinx from our boy, Pliny the Elder, from the Pompeii episode.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So he talks about it, and in his write-up, he mentions that its face is red. And so this has been likely confirmed. We have found small amounts of pigment all across the Sphinx. So like other ancient works, it was likely painted, the face at least, at some point in its existence, unlike the bare stone that we see today. And there are more records of repairs and renovations that happened during the Roman times. They build like this giant staircase like going down to see the Sphinx. But after Rome falls, the Sphinx is once again uncared for, and guess what? Swallowed by sand.
Once again.
Once again, back into the sand. So over the centuries, there are so many descriptions and stories about the Sphinx. There's a reason that it's such a mysterious figure. It sounds like its head was mostly out in general. So like you would just have this massive head hanging out. And so people give it mystical powers. Some people,
sure.
at some point in history, like there was a confusion where people believed that like the Egyptians were like, we just found this here. Which it sounds like maybe like a misinterpretation of Tutmos being like, I cleared it from the sand, and that was implying that he was like, I just came here and this existed. Yeah.
Right.
There's also incredibly goofy ass illustrations of the Sphinx in like, through like the 1200s, 1500s, because people are going off of other people's descriptions, many of which have never even seen the Sphinx, and notably, the Greek Sphinx is a woman. It's a woman's head. So a lot of like these early European descriptions, they're like, well, it's a lady, I guess. So like the illustrations are like a woman's head instead of a man, as it actually is.
Oh, funny. It's like a bad game of telephone.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone's like, yes, a Sphinx. I know what this looks like. I know
exactly what that is.
Obviously, one famous element of the Sphinx is its missing nose.
Yes.
It seems like that fell off a long time ago. There is a myth that Napoleon blew it off with a cannon, as you do. But
I'm sure he would love to know that.
Right, we would love to, but it does show from earlier illustrations that it was already missing a nose. And there's actually, all the way back in the 10th century, there were Arab historians, like, offering different explanations about the nose. There are several that claim that it was, like, an attack of iconoclasm. I don't know if that's the way to say it. But, that there is some issues in, like, Muslim doctrine about, like, representations of people and, like,
Sure.
of prophets and stuff, and that maybe someone was like, get that nose off of there, like you do.
Classically, yeah.
Classically. The Sphinx also had a beard at one point, the like pharaoh beard.
I did know that, yeah.
Yes. We have found some portions of that. And there is also just like a variety of other damage from over the years. There's a hole in the top of its head, and apparently someone wrote and was like, the priest stands in the hole and yells at people to like, give, Sphinx cult offerings and stuff. Or they think that it may have been like the anchor point for like a crown of some kind. There are also in like Pliny of the Elder's description, he says the Sphinx has an asp in his crown. Like when you picture like a pharaoh crown, there's the kind of snake in the top, which
snaky boy. Yeah.
It does not have today. So there's also like tunnels that were burrowed into it just because people, obviously, there's lots of tomb robbing and stuff that happened there, and people were like, is there anything good in here? And it does not appear like there was ever anything good in there. Just rock.
Just rocks.
But what we consider a modern excavation and research starts in 1817. They spend basically the entire rest of the 19th century clearing away the sand, and it was fully excavated in the 1930s. So there were some questionable repairs made to the Sphinx in that period, as well as lots of theories and guesses about the Sphinx's creation, since this is when, we're kind of first starting to be able to translate hieroglyphics and things like that. It sounds like they made additional repairs in the 80s that were bad, and then were redone kind of in the 90s, I think is when the Egypt kind of took control of this project.
Of their culture, sure.
Probably a good idea.
Their history, yeah.
Right. But we have a little bonus in the 90s. Surprise graveyard. What? Yo, I put a graveyard in your graveyard. In 1990, an American tourist was thrown from her horse when it tripped over a undiscovered mud wall in the sand. And surprise, it turned out to be a tomb that was like at the head of a cemetery that has about 600 workers, and like 30 overseers and their families, including like, because they have information about kind of the upper level people like painted on their tomb. There are people who are like project managing. They talk about people being like priests and priestesses of different gods, and it certainly seems like this is the cemetery for workers who were building the Sphinx and the pyramids and all of the various elements of the Giza necropolis. Which obviously archaeologists knew that this had to be somewhere and were incredibly hype to finally find it. And it was then 9 years later that they found the kind of city where people were living. They had living quarters with long barracks where people were like sleeping in big rooms. It seems like, similar to a military barracks.
Sure.
But it had like big kitchens. They had porches. They can look at the remnants of the food that was there and see that like they were slaughtering like young cattle. So like they were being fed beef, which is additional evidence against, I would say, kind of a long-term assumption that enslaved people were the ones building the pyramids. And it really seems like these were probably like laborers, like paid workers.
Yeah. Well, and to me, maybe that's just what I'm hearing, but like to me, being buried almost like under the eyes of the Sphinx would be like an honor, right? Like that's
definitely.
If this graveyard is kind of like in that area, this is very like spiritual, presumably.
Yeah, like it obviously, it's our modern interpretation, but I would also see it as an interpretation that like you are able, you put your life into working on these, great projects, and you are still kind of part of it. You're like in that necropolis with everybody. So yeah, it's just really cool to like think about that. And obviously, I would suggest that maybe it wasn't aliens who were around.
Correct. Yes.
See where the people were who were had talents. And it is really cool. In the Nova special, they also show they have like part of like an unfinished quarry where like they were starting to like carve out like blocks to pull them out, and just to like think about doing that with ancient tools is so cool and so impressive. But yeah, the Sphinx, I think, will in some ways always be a mystery, just because we have no written things. No one can tell us what they built it for, but we have a pretty good idea. It kind of fits in with what we know about the culture and what people were dedicated to worshiping and what their goals were. And he's a pretty cool guy.
My favorite part about him is how long his like arm paws are.
Yes. They're
so
super long.
Why are they so long?
Why are they so long?
His head's so tiny, his arm's so long. Yeah, I think anything, we talk about this all the time, but anything just like where you're able to really visualize like these people lived whole lives.
Yeah.
Like, and without any of the things we have now, like we're able to just achieve these astounding things. AI couldn't do that.
No, never. Simply could not. But yeah, it was really fun to kind of dig into Sphinxy things and see stuff that like, because obviously it was like, there's some stuff that I was like, I know about this from childhood, but like there is, kind of additional things that have been discovered since then. Yeah. So it was nice to kind of get updates on what people are thinking now. And it is just cool.
Didn't know a lot about the Sphinx itself. Like I feel like I was, like I said, more invested in like pyramid lore. So yeah, it's very interesting. It's just crazy. I'm looking at pictures of it and being like, man,
damn,
look at that. That's crazy.
Right. There is, so especially since you mentioned wind erosion, there is a theory that I was seeing around that potentially at least part of the Sphinx may have been like started as a natural wind formation. So like there are there are pictures, like there are stones that kind of like shape themselves that way. And there was just recently, like 2 years ago, people did like a digital model of like the wind could make something that's sort of Sphinx shaped, but I'm kind of, so it's like some of it, so it may have been like an inspiration for that, but also
Right,
like
like
we
the
do
people
obviously
looked at it and were like, that rock kind of looks like a
exactly, it'd be like, hey,
looks like
that's
the
like
body
a
of a
head,
lion.
like let's build some more. But like we do obviously have because we see the stones are used other places, like they definitely did some like quarrying and digging it out. But it's possible that maybe someone was like, hey, that kind of looks like a head, let's build a giant
Yeah.
lion with a man's head right here.
Very, very cool.
Yes. Thanks everybody for joining us for Sphinx Chat today. If you are a fan of the Sphinx, or if there are other topics from ancient Egypt that you would like to hear more about on the pod, we would love to know, because it's definitely fun to revisit these things. And if you enjoyed the pod, we would love to have a review. This helps us spread the word. You can leave your reviews on Apple iTunes. You can leave comments on Spotify, or send us one to our Instagram DMs. But I do think we may be out of fresh hot reviews.
We are currently.
I don't think we've had a review on Apple since June.
Wow.
That's tragic.
How will historians be able to look back and know?
Right? They'll look back and they'll be like, no one ever talked about this. So we'll just call
June.
it our own thing.
Historians doing a podcast, they're like, yeah, their podcast must have really sucked after June 2025 because nobody ever talked about it again.
That was the end.
That was the end, beginning of the end.
Oh, gosh. Please leave us a review and let us know if you're enjoying the show. Other ways that you can hang out and interact, you can join us on our Discord to talk about all things cool and spooky, especially as we're getting into Halloween season. I'm sure we're going to have lots of fun decor and crafts that people are sharing in there. Very excited. There's a link to that in our Instagram as well as in our show notes. And our Instagram is at Ghouls Night Pod in Pod. Woo! Do I even know? That's because I phrased it differently, and then my mouth went a whole different direction with it. Hoo-ah! You can find us on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod, and you can find me at Penny Snark.
And you can find me all over the web at Midge Munster.
And until next time, goodbye.